What does it really mean when your rabbit chooses to sleep beside you, not sit near you, not follow you, actually sleep next to you, where it is most vulnerable? At first, it does not seem like a behavior that should mean very much. Your rabbit jumps onto the bed, circles once or twice, settles near your legs, and stays there. Maybe it presses lightly against a blanket. Maybe it stretches out at the edge of the mattress. Maybe it chooses the same place every night with a consistency that feels strangely deliberate. To most owners, the scene looks simple, comfortable even. The rabbit wants warmth, softness, company. That is usually where the explanation ends. But with rabbits, ordinary behavior often hides more than it reveals. A rabbit is not an animal built to move casually through the world. It is built to monitor it. Long before domestic rabbits lived in homes, their survival depended on speed, detection, and caution. Their senses evolved around one central problem. Danger can appear suddenly, and if you notice it too late, you do not get a second chance. That prey animal inheritance still shapes the domestic rabbit in quiet but important ways. Even in a safe living room, even on a clean bed, even beside a person it has known for years, the rabbit's nervous system is still organized around vigilance. That is why this behavior matters. Sleep is not a neutral activity for a rabbit. Resting deeply means temporarily lowering awareness, loosening muscle tension, and giving up some of the constant environmental scanning that keeps prey animals alive. A rabbit does not make that choice carelessly. It may nap often, but where it naps, how fully it relaxes, and who it chooses to relax near can reveal something important about how it reads the environment. When a rabbit repeatedly sleeps with you, the behavior is not interesting because it is cute. It is interesting because it may represent a decision about safety. And rabbits make those decisions continuously. They decide whether a room feels stable, whether a sound is ordinary or threatening, whether footsteps mean disruption, whether a hand means restraint, whether a new object changes the emotional tone of a familiar space. Their lives are filled with these small evaluations. Most of them happen so quickly and so quietly that owners barely notice them. The rabbit pauses at a doorway, freezes for half a second, chooses one corner of the couch over another, sits facing the room instead of the wall, leaves a hiding place, then returns. These are not random habits. They are part of a running calculation about exposure, control, and predictability. So when a rabbit chooses your sleeping space, that choice deserves more attention than it usually gets. It may mean your scent has become part of the background conditions the rabbit associates with stability. It may mean your body movements, breathing patterns, and nighttime routine have become familiar enough to stop registering as disruptive. It may mean the bed itself has become a predictable territory, elevated, soft, enclosed by known smells, and repeated in the same form night after night. Or it may mean something even quieter than that. Not attachment in the sentimental human sense, but recognition. The rabbit has learned that near you, certain forms of alertness are no longer necessary. That is a serious shift for an animal whose instincts are built around caution. Owners often miss this because rabbit trust rarely announces itself dramatically. It does not always come toward you in obvious displays. More often, it appears as an absence, the absence of fleeing, the absence of tension, the absence of distance. A rabbit that stays near you while resting may be communicating not excitement but permission. It is allowing itself to become less guarded in your presence. That does not make the behavior simple. It does not automatically mean affection in the way people usually imagine it. A rabbit may sleep near you for several reasons at once: warmth, habit, routine, territorial preference, social comfort, environmental familiarity. Rabbit behavior is rarely driven by a single clean motive, but that complexity is exactly what makes the moment worth examining. Because once you stop treating the behavior as a bedtime quirk, a deeper question begins to emerge. What does it take for a rabbit to feel safe enough to sleep beside you at all? To understand why that question matters, you have to start with what sleep means to a rabbit in the first place. For humans, sleep is usually treated as a private biological necessity. For rabbits, it is also a risk event, a necessary one, but still a risk. Every period of deep rest reduces reaction speed. Muscles loosen, awareness narrows, The animal becomes less prepared to bolt, hide, or reorient at the first sign of danger. For a prey species, that loss of readiness is not trivial. It is one of the most vulnerable states the body can enter. This is why rabbit rest is often misunderstood. People imagine sleep as a simple sign of tiredness. The rabbit is tired, so it sleeps. But rabbits do not only decide when to rest, they also decide how to rest, where to rest, and how much of themselves to relax while doing it. A rabbit sitting upright with the body tucked underneath can be resting while still remaining ready to move. A rabbit stretched out more fully, with the hind legs extended, or the body rolled slightly to one side, is showing a different level of confidence in the immediate surroundings. A rabbit that flops, closes its eyes, or enters a visibly deeper state of stillness is revealing something more specific. At least for that moment, the environment has passed an internal threshold of safety. That threshold matters because rabbits are not designed to ignore uncertainty. They are designed to notice it. In natural settings, survival depends on being able to detect changes before those changes become direct threats. A sound in the brush, a shift in shadow, a vibration underfoot, a scent that does not belong. Those ancient pressures shaped a nervous system that prioritizes scanning, startle readiness, and fast escape. Domestication may soften some responses, but it does not erase the underlying architecture. The domestic rabbit still carries a body and brain that expect the world to change quickly and, at times, dangerously. That is why a sleeping rabbit is behaviorally significant in a way many owners do not fully appreciate. When a rabbit sleeps near you, especially in a relaxed and repeated way, the moment suggests that your presence is not currently being coded as a threat, interruption, or unstable variable. That may sound basic, but for a rabbit, it is not basic at all. Safety is not assumed. It is continuously evaluated. And because rabbits rely so heavily on environmental predictability, even familiar homes can contain small disturbances that affect rest. Loud footsteps, sudden laughter, reaching hands, inconsistent schedules, rearranged furniture, other pets moving unpredictably, new smells, bright light at the wrong time, or subtle tension in the room. This is one reason rabbits often develop very specific resting preferences. They do not choose sleep locations randomly. They choose places that offer some combination of concealment, familiarity, escape access, comfortable footing, known scent, and sensory control. In some homes, that means under a table. In others, it means behind a couch, beside a wall, or in a sheltered corner of a room. And in some cases, it means beside the same person, in the same place, night after night. That does not mean the rabbit has forgotten its instincts. In a way, the opposite is true. The behavior matters precisely because those instincts are still active. The rabbit is not resting near you because it has stopped being a prey animal. It is resting near you because, within its prey animal logic, your presence has become compatible with rest. That is a very different interpretation from the sentimental one most people reach for first. Instead of asking, "Does my rabbit love sleeping with me?" the more behaviorally useful question is, what conditions have made this level of vulnerability possible? Because vulnerability is the real signal here. A rabbit that sleeps near you is not just occupying space. It is revealing how it measures risk, how it distributes vigilance, and how carefully it decides when its guard can come down. Once you understand that vulnerability is part of the behavior, the next question becomes more precise. What does your presence mean to the rabbit at that moment? This is where people often rush too quickly into emotional language. They assume proximity must mean affection in the same way it would for a dog or even a person. But rabbit trust does not always express itself through obvious demonstrations. It is usually quieter than that, more positional, more environmental, more tied to whether the rabbit feels it can remain physically unguarded without losing control of the situation. That distinction matters, because rabbits do not build trust the way many owners expect. Trust in rabbits is rarely loud. It does not necessarily arrive as excitement, constant contact, or dramatic displays of dependence. More often, it appears through reduced defensiveness. A rabbit that once ran when you approached may now stay where it is, A rabbit that once remained half alert may begin resting with its body stretched out. A rabbit that once avoided direct proximity may now settle against a blanket near your leg and remain there long enough to fall asleep. These are not small changes in rabbit terms. They indicate that your body, your movement, and your presence have become more predictable inside the rabbit's internal model of the world. And predictability is one of the foundations of felt safety. For many prey animals, trust is not just about liking another individual. It is about being able to anticipate them. Suddenness is stressful. Inconsistency is stressful. Forced interaction is stressful. A person who reaches too quickly, picks the rabbit up often, changes routines unpredictably, or ignores subtle signs of discomfort may still think the relationship is close. But from the rabbit's perspective, closeness without control is not safety. Safety comes when the environment becomes readable, when sounds repeat in familiar patterns, when footsteps do not always lead to handling, when a hand does not always mean restraint, when being near you no longer requires the body to prepare for interruption. That is what makes sleeping near a person so behaviorally meaningful. The rabbit is not simply tolerating your existence, it is choosing proximity during a state that requires a lowered defensive posture. That choice may reflect social trust, but it may also reflect something broader, confidence in the emotional climate around you. Rabbits are highly sensitive to tone, pacing, and environmental tension. They may not understand your life in human terms, but they register patterns in movement, volume, rhythm, and mood. A calm person with consistent habits can become part of the rabbit's stability structure, even without frequent touching or overt interaction. This is also why trust can be present without being theatrical. A rabbit may trust you deeply and still dislike being carried. It may trust you and still startle at sudden noises. It may trust you and still prefer that affection happen on its terms. Owners sometimes misread this because they want trust to look warm, expressive, and obvious. But in rabbit behavior, trust often looks like restraint, disappearing, less freezing, less avoidance. Less distance, more time spent nearby, more relaxed posture, more willingness to rest without monitoring every second. In that sense, proximity becomes its own kind of language. Where a rabbit places its body tells you something about how it is reading the space, beside you, but not pressed tightly against you, near your feet, where it can leave easily if needed. At the same edge of the bed each evening, slightly behind your leg, facing outward while resting, as if using your presence as one stable part of the environment while still keeping awareness of the room. These details matter. They show that rabbit closeness is often negotiated, not surrendered. The rabbit stays near you without giving up the ability to regulate distance. That balance is important, because real trust in rabbits does not erase their instincts. It works with them. A rabbit that sleeps beside you has not become careless. It has learned that your presence and its own vulnerability can coexist. And that may be one of the clearest signs of trust a prey animal can give, not dramatic affection, but the quiet decision to remain near you while no longer needing to stay fully on guard. But trust alone does not explain the full behavior. A rabbit does not experience your bed the way you do. It is not just a place to sleep. It is a sensory environment. A stable surface, a concentration of familiar scent, a predictable source of warmth, a repeated location tied to the same time of day, and a territory that changes very little from night to night. For an animal as sensitive to pattern and disruption as a rabbit, those details are not background noise. They are part of how the world is interpreted. This is why routine matters so much. Rabbits are animals of repetition. They often eat, rest, explore, groom, and become active along recognizable daily rhythms. Many owners notice this without fully realizing how deep it goes. The rabbit appears in the kitchen at the same hour, runs down the hallway before bedtime, waits near a door before a normal feeding time, chooses the same resting spot in the afternoon. These are not trivial habits. They reflect an animal that relies heavily on environmental consistency to regulate stress and predict what comes next. That predictability has welfare value. In rabbit care, sudden changes often matter more than people expect. A new smell, a moved piece of furniture, a different cleaning product, a new pet in the home, louder nighttime activity, or even a shift in the owner's schedule can affect how secure the rabbit feels. Rabbits are often highly sensitive to disruption because their sense of safety is tied not just to whether danger is present, but to whether the environment remains readable. A familiar pattern allows the nervous system to settle. An unpredictable one can quietly raise vigilance, even if nothing visibly alarming is happening. So, when a rabbit repeatedly sleeps with you, the behavior may reflect a larger pattern of environmental trust. Your sleeping area may have become one of the most stable territories in the rabbit's daily map. It smells the same, feels the same, happens at the same time, contains the same body, the same breathing rhythm, the same lowered light, the same reduction in movement. All of this creates a kind of sensory continuity. To a rabbit, continuity matters because it reduces the number of variables that need to be monitored. And rabbits are always monitoring variables. They pay attention to pathways, corners, escape options, noise direction, floor texture, and whether a place allows them to remain exposed or partially sheltered. They also build familiarity through scent. Rabbits live in a world where smell carries information about identity, safety, ownership, and change. That means your blanket, mattress, clothing, and skin may all contribute to the meaning of the space. Over time, your sleeping area may stop being just your territory and become part of the rabbit's known environment, a place where your scent reliably predicts no threat, no sudden handling, and no major disturbance. This is where owners sometimes oversimplify the behavior as pure attachment. Attachment may be part of it, but rabbits do not separate social meaning from environmental meaning as neatly as humans do. A rabbit may choose to sleep near you not only because of who you are, but because of what your presence organizes around it. Familiar timing, familiar smell, familiar silence, familiar stillness. In other words, the rabbit may be drawn not just to you as an individual, but to the entire stable system that forms around you. That helps explain why some rabbits become unsettled when routines change. An owner starts going to bed later. A partner begins sharing the room. Furniture is rearranged. A move to a new home breaks old patterns. Suddenly, the rabbit sleeps elsewhere, becomes more watchful, or hesitates before settling. Owners may interpret this emotionally as rejection or moodiness, but the deeper explanation may be simpler and more behaviorally grounded. The sensory and territorial meaning of the space has shifted, so the rabbit's confidence in that space has shifted with it. Seen this way, sleeping beside you is not just a social gesture. It is part of a broader environmental choice. The rabbit is choosing a location where territory, routine, scent, and perceived safety align, and that suggests something important. What looks like a small domestic habit may actually reveal how strongly a rabbit depends on order, repetition, and sensory stability to feel secure enough to rest. By the time you put all of this together, the behavior starts to look very different from the way most people first describe it. A rabbit sleeping with you is not just a sweet habit. It is not just softness, warmth, or a preference for a comfortable place. Those things may be part of it, but they do not explain why the behavior feels so specific, so deliberate, or so quietly significant. What the behavior really reveals is the structure underneath it. How a rabbit evaluates danger, builds familiarity, chooses vulnerability, and decides when an environment is stable enough to stop resisting it. That is what makes the moment meaningful. Because rabbits do not move through domestic life casually, even relaxed rabbits are constantly interpreting. They are reading sound, timing, scent, body movement, access to escape, and changes in emotional tone. They notice what repeats. They notice what breaks routine. They notice whether touch comes with warning or without it. They notice whether a place remains predictable from one day to the next. Much of rabbit psychology lives in that quiet register, below the level of obvious drama, and that is exactly why behaviors like this are so easy to misread. Owners often want a clean, emotional answer. They want to know whether the rabbit is showing love, affection, or a special bond. Sometimes that language is not completely wrong. A rabbit that sleeps near you may absolutely be showing a form of social attachment, but rabbit behavior is usually more layered than a single emotional label can capture. The deeper reality is that the rabbit may be expressing several things at once: learned trust, environmental confidence, routine dependence, sensory familiarity, and a reduced need for defensive distance in your presence. That is more complex than affection, and in some ways more meaningful, because a prey animal does not give up vigilance casually. It does not enter a vulnerable state beside another being without repeated evidence that doing so is safe enough. And safe enough is important here. Rabbit trust is not absolute. It is contextual. A rabbit may sleep beside you at night and still be startled by a dropped object in the morning. It may trust your presence while still disliking being picked up. It may feel secure on the bed but uneasy in a new room. This does not weaken the meaning of the behavior. It clarifies it. Trust in rabbits is not a permanent emotional declaration. It is a pattern of decisions made over time, under specific conditions. That is why the behavior should not be romanticized, but it also should not be dismissed. It tells you that your rabbit has built an internal picture of the world in which your presence, at least in that setting, belongs on the safe side of the line. It tells you that the environment around you has become interpretable enough for rest. It tells you that your scent, your timing, your stillness, and your routine may now function as stabilizing cues. And it tells you something else that matters just as much. The rabbit is not only responding to what you do, but to the world you create around it. That has practical meaning for care. If a rabbit sleeps with you, the lesson is not simply that the bond is strong. The lesson is that security is built through consistency, low-pressure interaction, respect for body language, and an environment that allows the rabbit to keep some control over distance and choice. The behavior becomes evidence that these conditions may already exist, and if they can be created in one place, they can be protected in others. In the end, that may be the real message hidden inside this quiet habit. Your rabbit is not telling you something dramatic. It is telling you something more restrained and more revealing. It is showing you how safety feels from the inside of a prey animal's life, not as excitement, not as sentiment, but as a rare and careful decision to become vulnerable in a world it is still built to watch.